What's life without adventure? I'd say that phrase is synonymous with how this country established itself as the first nation in modern history to successfully establish a representative democracy. That's a great adventure indeed. But that adventure never ended. It continues to this day as the nature of the United States government continuously changes its shape, balancing the needs of the people with the government's ability to take decisive action. With that balance in mind, today we're going to take congressional lobbying, the best tool any citizen has to influence government, and put it to Rotary's four-way test. So, in applying the first of the four-way tests, we ask if it is the truth that congressional lobby groups have an excessive amount of power. The answer here is a clear yes, because their leverage over Congress exploded in the mid-20th century. In 1945, Congress capped donations from a political party to a candidate at $5,000, effectively destroying the way that most politicians had funded their campaigns. So those politicians were forced to turn to smaller grassroots organizations for their campaign money, and thus, Washington was opened up to a plethora of smaller lobbies and interest groups. The idea behind the reform was to make our government more democratic, but unfortunately it's done the opposite. Whereas previously, politicians were funded by political parties, groups that, by and large, represented very large numbers of constituents. Today, they're represented by smaller lobbies who care only about their own goals and their own smaller constituencies. So even though Washington is open to more groups of people, those groups are actually less representative of the general population, and thus, considering their function, lobbies passed Rotary's first test. They have an excessive amount of power. So now, the second test. Are congressional lobbies fair to all concerned? No. Because laws have been changed and now the balance between lobbyist and politician has shifted to favor the lobbyist immensely. In 1973, Congress passed the Sunshine Laws. Why were they called the Sunshine Laws? Well, before 1973, all committee meetings happened behind closed doors and most votes were counted anonymously. Many, justifiably so, saw this as undemocratic and secretive. And so, by 1973, lawmaking was in the sunshine. All committee meetings open to the public and all votes carefully recorded. Now clearly, this does make our government more open and more democratic, but it did something else too. It gave lobbyists the power to hold a politician accountable for every single vote he or she made. Before, a congressman could meet in secret to barter, swap, and compromise on issues. Now they have two choices. They can represent the groups that funded their campaigns to the fullest extent or risk losing their re-election money. The bottom line is that the balance has shifted. The process is no longer fair because there's no give and take. Lobbies hold all of the cards in the situation, and thus they do not pass Rotary's second test. So now, the third test. Do congressional lobbies build goodwill and better friendships? The answer here is no, because while a program they suggested may have been accepted for the betterment of society, that lobby will continue to fight for their chunk of the federal budget regardless of how important or necessary their allocation is. A great example would be the mohair subsidy. In 1954, wool was a vital strategic commodity because it could be used to manufacture military uniforms. So Congress allocates $100 million a year for wool producers. Only 6 years later, synthetic fibers like Dacron had knocked wool off the list and the subsidy became completely unnecessary. But that was when the wool lobby got to work. And so, the mohair subsidy, created in 1954, irrelevant in 1960, was not removed until 1993. And only then because reporters at CNN became aware of its existence and made this tidbit of pork barrel spending a highly public affair. This is one example in thousands. Lobbyists work for themselves, not for the general population. They do not build goodwill or better friendships. So finally, the fourth, and in this case, all-important test. Are lobbies beneficial to all concerned? The answer is no, because the constant lobbying that creates thousands of programs and subsidies holds our government back from forward progress. Interestingly enough, James Madison actually addressed this concern in Federalist Paper 51. He predicted that no small interest group, like a lobby, would ever get away with excess because other small interest groups would rise up and they would all cancel each other out. His logic is sound, but it doesn't apply to modern-day lobbying, because today's groups have absolutely no problem seeing another lobby succeed. Bob Berglund of the National Rural Electric Cooperative, when asked about rival groups losing their funds, stated this: "We think a good argument can be made for the support of all sides." The reason he said this is that it is an excellent argument for a pressing group to see another group succeed. Why discriminate against us if others got a slice of the pie? This is the core reason that not only are thousands of new subsidies added every year, but the old, unnecessary ones stay in place. The end result is a Congress that is paralyzed, and congressmen and women that are tied down to the desires of self-driven, self-interested groups, not the people who elected them. Overall, there's really no way to remove the influence of wealth from politics entirely. It might be the corrupt party bosses of the Gilded Age or the thousands of special interest lobbies of today. Money will always find a way to infiltrate our government. But we as Americans need to pick our poison and balance the power of the politician with the power of the one who funds the politician. That balance has to ensure that our government is checked, but it also needs to ensure that our government can act decisively and not be paralyzed. And that is just the next chapter in the most important adventure: perfecting our unique system of government. Thank you.